The longsword was already one of the best weapons ever introduced in the Monster Hunter series. And now that we finally have our hands on the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, they somehow made the longsword even better and cooler. And if you didn't already love the longsword, you probably hated it. Now, the longsword's always been a very divisive weapon in the Monster Hunter community. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people hate to love it. I've always been in the middle ground, where I think the longsword is a truly fantastic weapon for players to pick up and to excel with, but for experts to really make the best use out of. With all the special counters that we have with the longsword, and by keeping a nice steady damage flow while dancing all around the monster with this bad boy. And through all of my findings with the longsword in the Wilds beta, I can definitely confirm that the longsword has been changed up a lot, but for the better. Not only do we have new attacks with the longsword, but we also have different properties with the buffs that you might be already familiar with. But if you're not familiar with the longsword already, or you're a beginner to the Monster Hunter series, I'm going to cover everything that the longsword can do in the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, as well as go over the unique properties and attacks for people who are familiar with it. But a couple disclaimers before we get started. This video and guide is just for the open beta of Monster Hunter Wilds. A lot of these things are subject to change with the longsword. As I said in my greatsword video though, they're probably not going to change. Disclaimer number 2, there's timestamps down below. Otherwise, we're going to take the longsword through the training area, and I'm going to show you everything that it can do. I'm also going to give you a few in-action examples of the counters that you can do with the longsword. Pressing the triangle or Y button in succession will get you an overhead slash combo. If we could follow this up, it goes into the crescent slash. Like I said before, I'm just pressing the same button over and over again. Same thing can be applied to the circle or the B button. We'll get a thrust into a rising slash. We can actually chain the triangle or Y button with the circle or B button to get a combo that we want. They all flow into each other very nicely. Next, for normal attack combos with the longsword, we can press a combination of triangle and circle at the same time, or Y and B together, to get a fade slash. This is a nice attack to end your combo if you want, and to get some distance from the monster. If we're in the middle of an attack combo as well, we can actually hold a direction to go in a different direction with it. Or we can do neutral to go no direction at all and go backwards. We can also press R2 and the triangle button at the same time to do the Spirit Thrust attack. The Spirit Thrust doesn't do a lot on its own, but that's because we're going to get into the main mechanic of the longsword right now, the Spirit Gauge in the top left, as you can see, right below our sharpness meter. As you do attacks with the longsword, the Spirit Gauge fills up with energy. Having it reach a full bar doesn't really mean much on its own. To utilize the Spirit Gauge and to utilize the longsword properly, we have to do something known as a Spirit Blade combo. With enough meter, we can go into a combo where you can also press the right trigger indefinitely to get a Spirit Blade combo, which does actually have an end to it. From here, we press the right trigger over and over again to get a flashy and very strong attack combo. Pressing it for a 4th time ends in the Spirit Round Slash. Now, as we landed the Spirit Round Slash, we actually obtained what is known as the white buff on the Spirit Gauge. It's a buff that actually covers the entire Spirit Gauge with a kind of a coating or a border. The white buff gives us more damage, but is actually just the first step in getting all the way up to the red buff. If we keep filling up our gauge, we can do the same attack combo, the Spirit Blade combo. We have to hit with the Spirit Round Slash, and we go up to the yellow buff. From the yellow buff, doing the same thing, we can get up to the red buff, which actually changes the longsword's properties a lot. You'll notice that the longsword's meter actually dwindles over time with the red buff significantly. When we're doing normal attacks now with the red buff, our attacks actually change entirely. Our triangle and Y button combo has actually changed into the Crimson Slash combo. A significant upgrade than the white buff or the yellow buff. However, the circle button still remains the same. The different levels of the longsword Spirit Gauge actually give different properties, but as this is a beginner's guide to the longsword, and first for the beta of Monster Hunter Wilds, we're not going to go into it too in depth, but we are going to talk about the red buff, the most important buff on the longsword itself. But before we can talk about the red buff more, let's talk about the fastest way to actually get your gauge charged. There's actually just a 3-hit combo that you need to do to get all the meter you need for the Spirit Round Slash combo. It's as simple as pressing triangle twice for 2 overhead slashes, and by pressing triangle and circle at the same time to get the fade slash. From there, we can press the right trigger and go into the Spirit Blade combo. It actually acts as a shortcut too, as you can see. A longsword actually has its very own stance as well, known as the Special Sheathe. We can do the Special Sheathe out of pretty much any attack with the longsword, just by pressing the right trigger and X at the same time. Out of pretty much any combo, we go into the Special Sheathe. From here, we have 2 things we can do. We can do the EI slash by pressing triangle, a double hitting attack. Now I'm going to expend some Spirit Gauge, and what you're going to see here is that the EI slash actually made it so that we have a regenerative meter. However, when you are in the red meter, doing the eye slash doesn't actually do anything for you. It won't even halt the gauge from decreasing. The other thing we can do is by pressing the right trigger, we get the eye spirit slash. In old Monster Hunter games, this attack actually took some meter to use, but no more in Monster Hunter Wilds. The eye spirit slash always acted as a counter. It would take 1 meter to use, but if you timed it properly with a monster's incoming attack, you can utilize some iframes that are inherent in the attack itself to keep the meter that you were on. Now this attack doesn't cost any meter, and if you time it properly, you actually go up a meter. Now it doesn't appear on screen on our combos list in the top right, but another combo that we can do, or another counter I should say, is by pressing the right trigger and the circle or B button at the same time. This gives us the Foresight Slash, an attack that moves you backward and forward simultaneously to get good damage and actually acts as a counter, as I said. If you time this attack properly, you'll actually get through a monster's attack invincibly, and you can go straight into the Spirit Round Slash. Now let's get back into the red buff, and I'm going to show you exactly what the red buff is super capable of. I'm sorry, Artemis. Now our Spirit Blade combo is mostly the same, but we have a couple new follow-ups. We can press the right trigger again after the Spirit Round Slash to get the Spinning Crimson Slash. We can also get an improved version of the Foresight Slash by pressing the Foresight Slash button combination, right trigger and circle or B, to get the Foresight Whirl Slash. Next, let's go into the best damage that the longsword can do. You may remember that I showed you the Spirit Thrust earlier. Now that we're in the red buff, let's see what it does now. Pressing the right trigger and triangle, or Y at the same time, gets us the Spirit Thrust, which has been significantly upgraded. The Spirit Thrust can actually be done out of combos at a moment's notice. You can even do it out of a Foresight Slash. As you saw before, the Spirit Thrust does change into the Helm Splitter. Now, the unfortunate thing about the Helm Splitter is that it actually takes all of your red meter. So if we do the Helm Splitter right here, you'll see that we go back to the yellow buff. That's okay though, because we're basically cashing out on all the work that we've built up with the longsword with the Spirit Gauge combo. Now, monsters move around a lot, and the Helmbreaker has always been notoriously, kind of hard to hit a monster with. Because of this, you can actually press the square or the R1 button to sheath your longsword in midair. You don't have to commit to the Helmbreaker at all. That's something new to Monster Hunter Wilds. Next, let's talk about the actual best damage move that you can do with the longsword. We actually have a follow-up to the Spirit Helmbreaker. Pressing the R2 button after landing the Spirit Helmbreaker will get us the Spirit Release Slash. Note that the Spirit Release Slash also takes a bar of meter, so now we're all the way down to the white bar, if you can believe it. Now, another thing to note when you are doing the Spirit Blade combo is you can actually move it around a little bit. If you want to go to the left or the right, you can. This is good for changing up your trajectory. Next, let's talk about slopes. If you're sliding down a slope and you press the triangle button, you get the Jumping Rising Slash, which can be followed up with another press of the triangle or Y button to get the Overhead Slash. But you can actually start your Spirit Blade combo from a slide as well, just by pressing the right trigger. This actually goes straight into the Spirit Round Slash. Now let's talk about jumping attacks. From here, we can press the triangle button for a Jumping Slash, which goes into normal combos. And depending on the Spirit buff that we have, white, yellow, or red, we can actually press the right trigger out of a jump to actually start a Spirit Blade combo as well. The Jumping Spirit Blade 2 slashes 2 times and does a good amount of damage for the white buff. The yellow buff actually increases the damage, and the red buff actually gives us a 3-hit combo, and after doing any of these Spirit Jumping Slashes, depending on the buff, you can go straight into the Spirit Blade combo. Now, if we were to go for an extremely long combo, if a monster actually allows us to get all of our gauge all the way up to the Spirit Release Slash, our combo would look something like this. Triangle and triangle, into the Fade Slash, into the Spirit Slash combo by pressing the right trigger. We then go into the Special Sheath and do the EI Slash. We follow up with the Spirit Blade combo again. Back into the Special Sheath, EI Slash, of course. From here, you can actually do whatever you want. We can do a Crimson Slash combo. We can start doing it into the Spirit Blade combo. Into the Spirit Thrust, of course. And into the Release Slash. There are actually a couple shortcuts that you can do in between to actually get yourself a little bit more meter. When we're doing the Spirit Slash combo, we can actually press the circle or B button in between the attacks to give us a little bit extra meter. You just need to alternate between the trigger and the B or the circle button. And that's going to wrap up the Longsword video with the Monster Hunter Wilds beta. To be honest, I've never really been a big fan of the Longsword, but I've always had a respect for it, that the Longsword is a really good weapon for beginners, it's a great weapon for experts, it's just a fun weapon overall, man. It's like I said in the beginning of this video, this is truly a weapon that just dances around the monster, flows in and out with the weapons and the attacks. If you can time the counters, you even get better damage, and it gives you such a nice dopamine rush that's actually just through a steady flow of combat that you really can't replicate with some of the other weapons. It feels so rewarding to actually pull off the counters and to space all of your attacks properly while obtaining pretty decent damage, but just looking cool as hell. But as I said before, that is all I got for today's Longsword video, guys and gals. If you're a new player to the Monster Hunter series or to the Wilds beta, why did you want to choose the Longsword as your starting weapon? And if you're an expert or are familiar with the Longsword changes, are you happy with these changes that you've seen? Please let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're on our way to a goal of 30,000 subscribers before the release of Monster Hunter Wilds, and every bit helps. Or you can even join the live streams. I live stream Monster Hunter World weekly, every Thursday through Sunday here on YouTube, but also on Twitch. I multi-stream, so you can tune in on the platform of your choice. But that is all I've got for today's weapon guide. Stay tuned for the next weapon guide. Guys and gals, Terra Knight signing off. This has been Terroriza, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace!